We are afraid that the San Andreas Fault might explode because it's locked and loaded and it's overdue. We are afraid that the Cascadia subduction zone might produce a megathrust earthquake magnitude 9+, and shortly after that, a devastating monster tsunami 100 feet or so towards the coast only 8 to 15 minutes later. We've just learned the coastal lands will sink at least 2 meters, roughly like 5 feet. And we are afraid that something might change at the Yellowstone Super Volcano. So the bigger picture is the clue, because all these earthquakes and these volcanoes, they show movements, and there's plate movements, there's fault movements. So if we have a bigger picture, we maybe have a better idea. And Yellowstone is heavily surveilled. And what the scientists of the USGS, of the US Geological Survey, have released today is for us to understand, if we see how the ground moves at Yellowstone first. And in order to understand how the ground moves at Yellowstone, we need to look at the rest of North America first. Also the San Andreas Fault and the Cascadia subduction zone. This is very interesting, guys. I'm so glad I found this and that I can tell you about this. So what they're saying is, they say they have operating GPS stations at Yellowstone that basically surveil the volcano 24/7, continuously, every millisecond. Yellowstone National Park, very beautiful, very famous, very dangerous. So they do precise ground movement measurements that they can alert people should there be some dangerous changes. But all the measuring stations that they're using at Yellowstone to do that, all these stations are part of a much larger network all across the Americas. It's basically a continental scale scientific tool that is funded by the US National Science Foundation. And while I'm telling you more about this, I want you to look at these two pictures. These red lines shows us the motion. And on the left picture, we have the motion relative to the global reference frame. And on the right picture, we have the motion relative to the North American reference frame. So while you look at these two graphics, guys, I'll explain what this is about and what we can learn from this. So in addition to monitor the Yellowstone volcanic system, this broad network also tells us about such processes as tectonic plate motion, which is important, especially for the west coast of the US. Tells us about earthquake hazards, ground subsidence, tsunami risk, and so much more. So because if we look at Yellowstone, these small ground movements that are happening at Yellowstone, they are happening on top of something bigger, the bigger picture, as they call it. Because all of North America is in constant motion. So in order to fully understand what is happening in Yellowstone, we have to first look at the bigger picture. And while we look at the bigger picture, we also understand what's going on the West Coast, the famous part of the Pacific Ring of Fire. So the North American plate is moving towards the Pacific Ocean while also rotating counterclockwise. So it's doing several things at once. The earthquake hazard on the West Coast, where the North American plate basically runs into its neighbors, is obvious, unfortunately. From motion of the San Andreas Fault, sideways, to the Cascadia subduction zone. Underneath, the subduction zones are the worst. But to understand earthquakes that might occur due to a more subtle motion further inland, we have to look at areas where the plate is being slightly squeezed or pulled apart. And this can be so hard to see, guys, without the proper perspective and reference frame. And that is what the USGS is giving us now. And that's a good example that they're bringing up. They tell us, well, imagine that you're standing near a set of railroad tracks. And while the train is speeding by, you're asked to tell whether someone that is in the train while the train is passing you by, tell us if someone on the train slides a book on a table 1 inch towards the front of the train. Or 1 inch towards the back, doesn't matter. Can you tell? Probably not, right? I think that's a good example. And then they shift the location. But if you were standing on the train while it's going, and you're standing right there where the book is potentially being moved, it would be easy, very, very easy to tell in which direction the book was sliding. This is because your point of view differs, depending on your location. This has been brought up in science quite a few times before. In other words, your reference frame is important. That's a great example. I think that makes it clear while you're staring at these two pictures. Let's give a quick explanation, a deeper explanation to the pictures until I continue to tell more about what has been found. So the GPS station velocities in the Western USA are shown in a global, that's the left picture, and a North American, that's the right picture, reference frame. The direction and length of each red arrow that you see there, sometimes it's hard to differentiate the arrows, shows where that station is moving over time. So you put up a measuring station and that is actually moving with the plates that is moving it. And how fast. And guys, by the way, I'll put the link in the end screen. You should watch that video because this is, I have to say it again, groundbreaking. When the Myanmar 7.7 earthquake happened, as a surveillance camera filmed how the ground was moving. One person, there was no person, but if a person had been standing here and the other one next to it, it shifted substantially. The ground broke open and shifted. But the funny thing is with this video, you don't see it. Although it's so wide in the open. I watched the video the first time. I'm like, what's the fuzz about it? I looked down a little bit at the cracking concrete by the gate and I'm like, yeah, no, yeah, it's, but is it that? And then I watched it again. I'm like, oh, there's a tower collapsing and oh, there's this happening. It took me 10 times until I looked at the right area behind the gate and I'm like, oh, the ground, everything, it's shifting. It's like a train passing by. It's absolutely crazy. Watch that video, guys. You have to if you haven't seen it. Because this is live. Mother Earth live at work. The first time that anything like this had been filmed. So, we're looking at these two maps. Direction and length of each arrow shows us where the station is moving over time and how fast. Global reference frame shows us the overall motion of the North American plate. And the North American reference frame removes the overall plate motion so that areas of stress stand out on the plate. In this case, it's only focused along the West Coast because this is one of the predominant areas. There's stress accumulating along the San Andreas Fault and the Cascadia subduction zone. Like plate boundaries on these maps are indicated by the yellow lines. So your reference frame is important. And when scientists look at Yellowstone, they say, we do something like this to look at subtle movements in Yellowstone, despite the whole North American plate being on the move. So the big plate moves, but they're looking at what is on top of it. They're looking if the book is sliding. And they say you can subtract the average motion of the mostly quiet interior of North America. And they say just being on the train negates the train's speed for your personal frame of reference, right? So you're on the train, you're looking at the book. And this makes the ground movement that differs from the big plate motion stand out. And it becomes far easier to identify areas where the Earth's crust is very hidden, deforming under stress, subtle. So the USGS says by using this North American reference frame, we can more easily see the ground deformation that is going on in the Yellowstone region. And yeah, it's a super volcano. That is important. So once the overall motion of the North American plate is removed, once the motion of the train is removed, and you're looking at the book, it is possible to see that GPS stations northeast of Yellowstone are moving very slightly eastwards. And I've reported about this recently, that the magma chamber is also moving, and that the location for it, hopefully in the very far future, that location is moving as well. Stations that are located in the southwest of Yellowstone are moving significantly towards the southwest. And now if you ask yourself, well, are they pulling away from each other? Yes. The two sides are gradually pulling away from each other. This pulling away from each other is related to the basin and range region that's between Wyoming and the Sierra Nevada mountains of California. Because there, the North American plate is being stretched apart. This is a fact. It's just not many people are looking at this or are even aware of this. We're always only looking at the obvious ones. But if we remember those of us that were alive at that time, or know about it, heard about it, the Haben Lake earthquake in 1959, that was a magnitude 7.3 earthquake. And that is a powerful reminder of the fact that this tectonic stretching affects the Yellowstone area as well. So if that stretching produces a 7.3, whew, this is something definitely that they should look at. And guys, there's even more deformation superimposed on the overall stretching of the ground at Yellowstone. Because at Yellowstone, there's magma and water beneath the ground. And that can cause the Yellowstone caldera to inflate or deflate. Inflate is not good. We know that. We're dealing with something like this at the other supervolcano, Campi Flegrei. By the way, I put this in the end screen as well. New data that tell us for the first time how tiny little more pressure is only needed to blow this thing up. It's scary. It's in the end screen. So we have magma and water beneath the ground of Yellowstone. And depending on what's happening, like a balloon, it can inflate or deflate over time. And that creates these localized deformation patterns. So by looking at GPS stations or station positions, purely in terms of their east-west movement, those stations within the Yellowstone caldera, they stand out. Because rather than continuously migrating in one direction, like the station that are outside the caldera, stations in the caldera move towards or away from the caldera over time due to periods of subtle inflation or deflation. So the volcano is alive. So this, all that helps so much to interpret the ground motion, to understand what's going on in Yellowstone, what's happening with the volcano system, what's happening underground. But also, and that's what I find so interesting, it helps us to differentiate between earthquakes that are related to the big picture tectonics and those earthquakes that are related to magma movement and fluid pressure within Yellowstone. And that is so crucial, because if an earthquake is tectonic, yeah, bad enough. But if a larger earthquake is volcanic at a super volcano, that can be very, very dangerous. We don't want that. So in order to maybe not to panic if there is a tectonic one, like, it's going to blow, right? Now with these systems, we can differentiate that. We can say, volcano's not blowing up most likely. It was just tectonic earthquake. Just a train driving. It wasn't the book. Yellowstone, how they call this, is a very unique and incredibly unique marvel. But it's also connected to its surrounding areas, to the geology that surrounds it. And the scientists of the USGS are saying we can't understand a piece without understanding the whole. And by making precise measurements inside and outside the Yellowstone region, we gain the contacts to isolate the signs of volcanic, hydrothermal, and tectonic activity, detecting even the smallest changes, which can be crucial if it's volcanic. And again, we're ending this with what we started this video with. It just takes the right frame of reference, guys. I hope you like this video. Click on one of these videos in the end screen, and if you don't want to miss either of them, subscribe, go to my channel page, go to videos, go to recent, or just put in the search function Myanmar or Campi Flegrei and check it out, guys. If you like the video, please leave it a like, share it with your friends, leave me a comment. What do you think? And if you want to fill me up with coffee, guys, I have this Buy Me a Coffee site. Link is in the description underneath this video. And thank you for your supers. Hello to all new members. If you click the join button, you become a channel member, a supporting channel member, and you get behind the scenes videos from me and my animals, my farm, just my private life, so to speak. So I see you in the next one. Click here. Stay safe.